Welcome to the Sports Watchdog Radio Show, hosted by Mason Kern. He keeps his nose to the ground to report on what's trending in professional and college sports, to inform, enlighten, and entertain. And now it's
the Sports Watchdog.
The Sports Watchdog, Mason Kern.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sports Watchdog Radio Show here on NBC Sports Radio, AM 1060 Phoenix. As always, I'm your host, Mason Kern, joining you every Sunday, and I got another great episode for you here on today's show because you know what? It's going to be an ASU football-heavy episode, okay? Because I know you here in the Valley want to hear about how your Sun Devils are doing. You're in the midst of football season bye week this past week after a huge victory over then number 15 Cal that propels ASU to number 20 in the AP poll. And you know, last time this year that ASU was ranked, they get put at number 24 after they beat Michigan State, and they lay an egg at home. They lose to Colorado. They get out of the rankings, but hey, guess what? They go back on the road, get another huge road victory, back in the rankings, this time in the top 20. So, can they get another momentum-carrying win, or will they lay another egg? I guess we're going to wait and find out to see, but a lot of news coming out of the program in the last week, especially just because of the bye and along the recruiting trail and in preparation for Washington State. All right, guys, so in our kind of ASU-centered sports hot topics program, hot topics of the week this week, we're focusing on football, especially, like I said, they get a huge victory over number 15 California on the road. And it was kind of, you know, Benjamin's breakout performance of this season just because it's been a struggling offensive line up to this point with what people believed was going to be a senior-heavy, laden offensive line group that gets kind of put in flux because Zach Robertson is away from the team dealing with personal matters. So the left tackle was kind of in flux, that position. So they moved Cole Cabral from center to left tackle, where, okay, he was a Remington Award watch list honoree this season, projecting to be one of the nation's best centers in college football, but he was really their only option at the time. Coaches thought at left tackle, so they moved him there. He played there in 2017, was not great to begin the season, and especially having to deal with freshmen, true freshmen, that is, offensive linemen in Donovan West and Ladarius Henderson now also playing, because by that Michigan State game, there were some errors with the snapping on West's part. It's just a lot to ask for a true freshman to start effectively on the offensive line, especially at center. So they shift West to right guard for that Michigan State game. They move Cabral back to center, and then they take another true freshman in Ladarius Henderson, put him at left tackle. So you have two true freshmen on your offensive line, but you get some more stability with that Cole Cabral move back to center. And they win that Michigan State game. So, okay, you think you have a pretty good lineup set. Cade Cody went down before the season started with a broken foot. He's practiced this last week. But, okay, so you get into this kind of standard formation, this standard starting lineup. They get more comfortable. You go on the road again to Cal, and you do a pretty good job, okay? The offensive line did respectable, but your true freshmen are outplaying your seniors at this point in time. Stephen Miller at right tackle, he's had some issues this season in both pass pro and run blocking. So there's some errors there when your true freshmen are outplaying your seniors. Granted, that bodes well for maybe the future with these young guys who are going to play maybe be 4-year starters on the offensive line, relatively unheard of in college football. But for right now, it poses a slight challenge. And ASU is going to have to get their recruiting hats on and get some offensive linemen. I think they have 5 committed in the class already. So it's going to be really interesting to see where that kind of storyline goes from here on out. But Eno Benjamin gets 3 touchdowns in the Cal game, and he gets 100 yards on 29 carries. That kid is just a workhorse, okay? He gets the extra yardage. He got his famous spin move. And true freshman Jaden Daniels has another great game for the most part. I mean, relatively few freshman mistakes, freshman throws, you would say. He's thrown 1 interception to this point in time. And sure, the yardage isn't amazing. He threw for 174, but at the same time, he's getting done what needs to get done, especially the unannounced plays on the ground. The scrambling has been huge this year. He had his career high in rushing yards, I think 84 in the Cal game. So just extending drives, giving ASU the opportunity to win games. That's what Jaden Daniels has done to this point. Now, in recruiting news, granted, it is a bye week this week in preparation for Washington State. Coaches were out on the recruiting trail on the road this week, and back on Friday, they get a 4-star linebacker commitment in Jordan Banks. The defensive recruiting has been pretty respectable up to this point. Antonio Pierce, their ace recruiter, has done a really remarkable job in terms of getting guys that both fit the scheme, who might be a little under the radar, and also the higher profile guys like Merlin Robertson and Ashari Crosswell in the secondary. And now you add a guy like Jordan Banks, who out of Narbonne is the third player out of Narbonne High School in Harbor City, California in this 2020 class so far for the Sun Devils. You have Banks now, you have a 2020 wide receiver commit Kobe Stewart, and you have 2020 defensive back commit Mason Williams. So there's a lot of talent. There's a pipeline, it seems like right now, between Narbonne High School and ASU. Darian Butler also came from that high school as well. So they get Jordan Banks as a depth piece in their linebacker core. Also, Will Schaefer out of Scottsdale Saguaro High is also committed to ASU, and he's another linebacker prospect that the program is pretty excited about. Now, two other guys who are close in their decisions. Defensive lineman Omar Norman Lott has been trending toward the Sun Devils as of late. And also, you have another guy who I think is really going to be pretty spectacular if he ends up coming to ASU, in Brendan Rice out of Hamilton High, wide receiver. He was unofficially visiting ASU on Wednesday, seemingly was down to Michigan and Colorado, but now trending in ASU's direction.
Do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Are you being audited or investigated? Has the IRS sent you a letter demanding payment? You may not owe what they claim. Make this free call to the tax doctor now. Let them negotiate with the IRS on your behalf. Call 800-605-4650, 800-605-4650. That's 800-605-4650.
Hey there, everybody. You're listening to the Sports Watchdog Radio Show on NBC Sports Radio AM 1060 Phoenix. I'm your host, Mason Kern, and joining us now for the second time is Jack Perconte, the former MLB second baseman turned author of 3 books, The Making of a Hitter, Raising an Athlete, and Creating a Season to Remember. On September 13th, 1980, at the age of 26, Jack made his debut in the MLB for the Los Angeles Dodgers. He would play for 6 years, most notably for the Seattle Mariners. Jack has dedicated his post-Major League Baseball career to helping youth by teaching the game of baseball. He now helps athletes and their parents through the complicated world of youth sports through writing about his playing and coaching experiences. So with that, Jack is back on the show today to talk about his time in Major League Baseball and give us some insight on the state of youth sports today. Hey, Jack, welcome to the Sports Watchdog Radio Show. So glad you could be here again today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Mason. Yeah, looking forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, so I know last time we kind of touched on some of the state of youth sports as it is today and again into your MLB past as well, but I want to kind of get back into it. What's been going on since the last time we talked? Is there any update in terms of how you've been coaching and an update as to where we stand now?
Yeah, not really. As a coach, you're always learning new things, It's a never-ending process, so I'm always trying to figure out, better ways to work with kids and get the most out of them. And, as far as baseball goes, I guess the big thing now is the hitting is the launching angle thing. And so kind of dealing with that with kids too. They all want to start trying to lift balls more and more, but unfortunately, they don't have the strength and the talent that a lot of the big league players have. So it's a little different ball game for them.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a little more complicated, and I'm sure it's kind of funny trying to teach them how to do that right. And we talk about, or you hear this phrase kind of thrown around in youth sports, but at the big league level too, respect for the game. And you kind of hear that term just thrown around quite a bit. So in your opinion, Jack, what does that phrase really mean, and how should people go about trying to show that respect?
Well, I think, at every level you have to have respect. First of all, coaches have to show it, and it starts with the coach. They're the example. And, when coaches, they're out there throwing things, arguing with umpires or berating the players and, just playing to win no matter what, things like that are not showing respect for youth sports anyway, and a lot of times they forget that it's not professional sports, and so they go about it the wrong way. And then, parents have a responsibility too as fans to treat people correctly in the game. The games are going to go on long after the the people leave it, and so they have to realize that, yelling at refs and showing disgust with players and making any kind of disparaging comments is just not right, and I always tell everybody if people leave the games talking about anything but the game themselves, then we have a problem. And more you see that now, where people are leaving games and they're talking about what happened in the stands or what the coach did or things like that. And then players, of course, have a responsibility too to treat the game correct, to give their best. They should never be the ones that are questioning officials, wearing their uniform correctly. Things like that are all important things, and we expect them to play hard and show enthusiasm for the game. And when they stop doing that and don't hustle out there, it really disrespects the game. So at every level, each level is responsible for having respect for the game and treating other people, fairly and with respect.
Right, and I feel like, especially in today's version of youth sports, that's kind of been the trend where more parents are becoming more involved and getting more vocal. And being involved is good, but it comes to a point where there's a line, and sometimes I think certain parents at least cross that in terms of the disrespect portion. But you talk about coaches and their role, and it's extremely important for them to set a good example. So what else can coaches do, not just in terms of respect, but just in games to help teams in general and help certain players as role models?
Well, I think they have to, to be responsible once again in how they treat the kids, make sure they allow communication to go on. I think a lot of times a lot of coaches are, my way or the highway, and they don't take any, opinions from anybody else, and that's not a good thing. It's important to listen to what the kids have to say. It's important to listen to what parents have to say, at the appropriate times, of course, but they can't just, go about things the way they were taught, maybe 20 years ago and think that things haven't changed, So things have changed, and coaches must realize that and take, have open lines of communication so that everybody has their say. And I think things go a lot smoother now. And, coaches have to realize that kids, they respond a lot more to approval now than to, disapproval and inattention. So it's important that coaches, show their approval and give kids the attention they want, whereas many years ago that might not have been the case as much, but now kids definitely need approval, and coaches are responsible for that.
Right, and I mean, you talk about the changes over the past, I would say decade. I feel like youth sports in general have changed so much. So what would you say is kind of the biggest change that you've seen over the course of youth sports over the past decade or so?
Well, when money came into it, probably, 15, 20 years ago with the travel teams, and all of a sudden parents are paying quite a few dollars for kids to play. And the minute they started, anteing up more money, I think they felt like they have a right to a say, and which, they probably do to a certain extent. And so things, there's a lot more pressure built up on everybody, when the money's involved. So the coaches feel a need to win, and the parents feel like they, have a say, and the kids feel a lot more pressure having to win and be the best because, parents, once again, a lot of hard-earned money's going into them playing. So it's definitely changed the game, and not always for the best. And so everybody's got to try to still keep it in perspective as that they're still kids, and it's about maturing into, responsible adults and not just being the best athletes out there.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. And then going back now, Jack, to your Major League Baseball days, there's been some changes in the game of Major League Baseball as well. Making your debut in 1980 for the Dodgers, compared to now, if you've been keeping up with it, what would you say is kind of the biggest change you've seen in the big leagues in Major League Baseball over this amount of time?
Well, as far as the players themselves, they're just bigger and stronger. That's for sure. If you look at tapes from players back in the early '80s compared to now, they don't look nearly as big and strong as the players now. And so the game has really gravitated towards the long ball, of course, at the higher levels, where it's, like I talked about before, it's all about home runs now. And so in that regard, the game's definitely changed. I was a little singles hitter, and I'm not too sure there's a place for me in the game anymore because of that. So, it's definitely, as far as players go, they're just bigger and stronger, and I don't know about faster, but they're definitely, it's a year-round endeavor now, and it's all about hitting the ball far.
Right, and I'd say it's a kind of a new breed, I guess you could call it, of baseball player making it to the big leagues these days. But hey, there's something to be said for contact hitters. There's still a place in this game for contact hitters. But as we go that transition from high school or the youth to either the college level or the pro level, what advice would you give, or how do you kind of go about treating that transition?
Well, I think that's, besides developing the best baseball skills you can, I think that's probably the big thing is, become the best athlete at the same time. Years ago, once again, the baseball players weren't considered maybe the greatest athletes out there, but now you have to be, you have to be big, you have to be strong, you have to be fast. So I would say, make sure you're developing your physical skills as well as your baseball skills. And then, it gets back to, making sure your grades are up to par, because that's very important. That opens up a lot of different schools for you. And, and you still have to look beyond the baseball, of course, life and what you're going to do after. So make sure your grades are up. And then, a lot of times you have to market yourself nowadays. Start looking for colleges, maybe freshman or sophomore years of high school, at least get an idea of what kind of school, what kind of academics you're going to be looking for, and then, kind of start marketing yourself a little bit, because it's a lot harder now for the coaches to find places for you. So if you start looking yourself, that helps. And then, be very coachable too, because, college coaches, the first person they're going to call is your high school or your summer league coach. So if you're not a very coachable player, that word's going to get out to the college coach, and right away he's not going to want to deal with you, So there's a lot of little things that players can be doing to help themselves.
Right, that's definitely some very great advice there from Jack. Thank you so much. We're running out of time here, so where can our listeners go to connect with you or to stay in touch?
Well, my website, baseballcoaching.tips, is a great place to learn about the game. And once again, my 3 books can really help, especially parents, I think, to bring their kids up. And for coaches, Creating a Season to Remember is really a fine book for everything in coaching that they'll probably encounter at the youth sports level.
Well, there you go, guys. Make sure to go check out the website and check out those 3 books as well. Jack, thank you so much for your time. All right, everyone, the Sports Watchdog Radio Show on NBC Sports Radio AM 1060 will be right back after this short break.
Hi, my name is Lily. My mom and dad used to fight about money all the time. Then one day, I heard them talking about this guy, some uncle I never knew, called Uncle Sam. Well, they say this Uncle Sam guy wanted them to pay him like $1 gazillion, and they didn't have $1 gazillion. So they called this company they heard on the radio called the Tax Doctor. And the Tax Doctor worked with Uncle Sam's people. I think they're called the IRS. And they were able to work it out so my mom and dad didn't have to pay Uncle Sam very much money at all. So now mom and dad are happy, and I'm happy too. Thanks, Tax Doctor.
If you owe $10,000 or more to the IRS or state, call now and pay less.
800-605-4650. 800-605-4650. That's 800-605-4650.
Hey there and welcome back. You're listening to the Sports Watchdog Radio Show on NBC Sports Radio AM 1060 Phoenix. I'm your host, Mason Kern, and joining us now is Jamar Williams, a former NFL defensive back for the New England Patriots. Jamar spent over 4.5 years playing professional football and was part of the Patriots' 18-1 AFC champion and Super Bowl contesting team. With a plan to transition from professional sports into the business world, Jamar seemingly did the impossible. He earned his MBA while simultaneously playing football. Today, Jamar exudes his passion and competitive spirit in information technology as a client engagement executive for R.L. Canning Incorporated. He also serves as a solid member of the Chicago chapter NFLPA, NFL Alumni Group, and Chicago Speakeasy Men of Excellence. So Jamar is here today to share more insight into his NFL career as well as life after football. Hey, Jamar, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mason. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for asking. So, just to kind of get started into this, what made you kind of decide to pursue NFL or football even as a career for you in the first place?
Oh, it's a good question. Well, as a kid, everybody has that dream, right, of when you're playing sports and, you imagine you're Tom Brady or whoever that guy is, that iconic guy on television that you want to be. And so, as a kid, you have that, but I never saw myself as being that. Growing up, I wasn't the biggest kid. I went to high school 4'11", 100 pounds, so it was never really that passion for me. But I think as I continue to develop, physically and, as my talents continue to shine, going to college and earning a Division I scholarship. And I remember it was after my sophomore year where I had a really good season. There was a sports magazine that had me pound for pound listed as the #1 tackler in the nation. And I think at that point is where, agents were calling my house as a sophomore, speaking to my mom, and then it got to a point where I was like, well, maybe going to the NFL is a little easier than taking the MCAT. So I think that's really where that diversion, kind of came about. But, I always saw myself as, student athlete, student being #1 and athlete being #2. And so, I guess football just ended up eventually choosing me.
Right, yeah, and that's obviously a great mindset to have, especially as a student athlete. But then how were you kind of able, as an undersized athlete, especially in football, able to kind of shake off possible criticism and all that doubt about you based on being a little bit undersized?
Well, for me, that form of adversity has always been something that I had to go through. So I went to a huge powerhouse from high school. In terms of football powerhouse, they were always one of the top schools in the nation in football, Brother Rice High School. And, coming in, as I told you, 4'11", 100 pounds,
right.
Most people stated that you'll never play there. So that mindset was always something that was embedded into me. And so I knew effort and having heart would be #1. And then speed. I was a fast guy. And so, as I continued to grow and develop, being able to utilize the gifts that I was blessed with to make myself surmount over, any opportunity and challenge, and just that competitive edge. And that's something that I think has also helped me in terms of making the transition from the field into, corporate America today, is just having that competitive edge.
Right, and then as you kind of transitioned then from the college game to the NFL, can you kind of take me through that process and what it was like getting your first professional contract?
No, that's great. It's a great question. I would say in the first contract, everyone. So let me take a step back. Everyone thinks that as soon as you make it professionally, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, whatever it is, that you just walk into millions and millions of dollars, and it's not that way at all. Some individuals, they're fortunate enough to come in with that, but that's not everybody's road. And so for me, coming into my first contract, I was more so enamored with the fact that, I'm a New England Patriot and got the actual NFL contract more over than the money, because the money wasn't a lot, in terms of a signing bonus. But eventually you grow and, you're able to obtain some wealth. But you also have to be financially conscious of your spending and, do a lot of self-education in addition to the knowledge and education that the NFLPA provides with you throughout that process. So one of the things that, I often talk to younger players about today is, when you first get to training camp or in the mini camps before training camp actually starts, you're there pretty much from May all the way until training camp is just about to kick off. and you have different seminars and classes on, financial matters, money matters, investments. I mean, the NFL provides these different things, but your focus and concentration at that time is on making the team. You have literally about 100 guys in camp, and, that's listed on the roster, but only 53 will make it.
Right.
And so while you're sitting in those seminars and in those classes, you're not necessarily focused. I think, if I could make a recommendation, I would highly encourage colleges for their athletes to provide or make mandatory classes for those student athletes, as they're going through their curriculum, because then you're forced to focus on it, and it's not something that's just a one class, two class type of deal. This is something that you're learning throughout the whole semester, and it'll help you and better prepare you for that transition.
Right. I mean, that transitional period, extremely important, especially in terms of being prepared. But as you kind of went throughout your career, what motivated you then to continue your education and then get your MBA?
Good question. So my brother and I, we made a pact. Our parents didn't graduate from college, neither went to college, and so we made a pact that no matter what, we'll be the first to walk across the stage and graduate from college. And so in my undergraduate, I graduated from University of Buffalo, major in chemistry, minor in bio, and I didn't actually get to walk across the stage because mini camp started at the same time of when my actual graduation. So, it kind of robbed of that dream, but it was like, hey, I'm going to the NFL, I got the degree, and so it didn't matter at that specific time. And, going in undergrad, I majored, wanted pre-med, wanted to be a doctor, but as I started to build relationships and, get into this professional sports world, I started seeing that business and entrepreneurship was something that I was really passionate about.
Right.
And so at that point, it started to change my perception of what I wanted to do once my career ended. And so from building relationships and understanding, in college, it's often extremely difficult for, collegiate athletes to obtain an internship and be committed and consistent to it on top of your workouts and everything else that you're doing. Your resume, when you finish up, the only thing it really has on there is football, right? So going and obtaining my master's, earning my master's degree, which, again, the NFLPA is great in terms of helping those NFL athletes out in terms for postgraduate education and, helping to guide individuals in that direction. I started prepping myself as, the end of life of football started to come to play and said, hey, I want to attain my master's. And then at the same time, this is the second chance to walk across the stage. So I was able to do both. And it was definitely a major stepping stone in terms of helping me to make that successful transition into business.
Right, yeah. I mean, being able to also complete, two of your dreams, playing professional football and walking across that stage, I'm sure pretty cool. And then the transition period, like you mentioned, a lot of athletes, I don't feel like they think about life after their professional career. So, really smart that you were kind of able to do that and do both. So I'm sure that made the transition pretty easy, or at least easier for you. So what was that transition actually like, going from the NFL into the business corporate world?
Very humbling. Very, very humbling. You go from being an individual that, wherever you go, people are happy to take your picture, take pictures with you, signing autographs, to, now, you're entry level. You're once again a rookie in your life. And so you're learning the game. You have to be, and I think there's a lot of comparisons and similarities with football as well as, corporate America, that helps to balance out. So if you can use some of those same principles, it'll definitely help to guide you. But it is a very humbling path to get yourself there, but you have to be consistent in that process. And so for me, taking the direction of starting off in sales, I started off in IT sales for telecommunications and cloud solutions, and I had no idea what any of that stuff meant walking into it. But it was the same effort that I took that made me successful in football, which was being the first one on the field and the last one to leave on those practice days, and studying and understanding what I'm great at or what I'm good at and how I can be great at that, and what I'm not good at and how I can get better at it. I took those same principles into that, and it's helped me off the field in terms of making that transition. So from working my way there to, finding a amazing opportunity with the current company I work with now, R.L. Canning, who does great things in the public and private sector for managed services and IT, and, utilizing those things as well as those relationships that I was able to build along the way. And so for me, the principles that got me in football, being functional excellent, a person of integrity, treating people as I want to be treated, those things balance on field as well as off field.
Right, yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of it comes back to that mindset as well. Just like you kind of said, being the first one on the field, last one to leave. I mean, translating back into the corporate world, I mean, it has allowed you to have that success as well. Very cool indeed. Well, Jamar, thank you so much for your time. We're running out of time. Where can our listeners go to get more information or just connect with you?
Oh, man. LinkedIn is one of the things. I'm not really heavy on social media, but I'm consistently doing things within the community to help rebrand myself. So, you can Google me, Jamar Williams. You'll find different things of what I'm doing there as well as LinkedIn.
Well, there you go. Make sure to go check out LinkedIn, check out the webs as well. Thank you, Jamar, again so much for your time. All right, everyone, the Sports Watchdog Radio Show on NBC Sports Radio, AM 1060. We'll be right back after this.
Well, that's a wrap, everyone. Anybody wanting to connect with me, the Sports Watchdog, on Twitter can do so at @SportsWatchdog, and on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube as well at The Sports Watchdog. So until next time, keep your eye on the ball.
The Sports Watchdog.
The Sports Watchdog Ace and Kern.